Thank you to our moderator and panelists for sharing their expertise and their insights. Until the stage is ready, let's prepare for our next panel discussion on the global challenges of AI and the future of cybersecurity. Joining us on this panel are Mr. Gevorg Mantasyan, First Vice Minister at the Ministry of High-Tech Industry of the Republic of Armenia, Mr. Armen Nurbankyan, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Armenia, Mr. Karsten Fitelm-Geyer, Senior Advisor for the Cyber Diplomacy at the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue, Mr. Pegor Papazian, Chief Development Officer at TUMO, Center for Creative Technologies in Armenia, and Mr. Luis Nogorol, Cybersecurity Science Fellow from the US Embassy. Our moderator for this discussion will be Mr. Shant Kasarjan, Cybersecurity Director at ISAA.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today for this unique panel discussion, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Cybersecurity. As we navigate through an era marked by rapid technological advancements, artificial intelligence stands as one of the most transformative innovations in modern society. It offers unparalleled benefits such as flexibility, productivity, and scalability. With these benefits, the use of artificial intelligence brings other layers of cybersecurity challenges, if we do not plan properly, of course. The cybersecurity threat landscape is constantly evolving, and risks associated with unauthorized access, data breaches, and cyber attacks are more prevalent than ever before. Today, we are fortunate to have a distinguished panel of international experts who will share with us their insights on the latest global trends and challenges on topics related to cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. His Excellency, Dr. Gevorg Mantasyan, First Deputy Minister at the High-Tech Ministry. His Excellency, Dr. Armen Nurbankyan, Deputy Governor at the Central Bank of Armenia, Dr. Luis Nogorol, Cybersecurity Science Fellow, US Embassy, Mr. Pegor Papazian, Chief Development Officer, TUMO Center for Creative Technologies, and Minister Karsten Geyer, Senior Advisor for Cybersecurity Diplomacy at the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue. Please thank me in welcoming. So let's begin with our first panel question. Your Excellency, Dr. Gevorg, let's begin with you. How is Armenia preparing its technological infrastructure to leverage AI in national cybersecurity? And what are the key barriers to adoption within the government sector?
I guess I have 5 minutes only, right?
Yes.
Okay.
5 minutes.
To be short, let's phrase this way. We focus on building the quality infrastructure in this fast-changing world and in so many changes and the speed of the adoption of different technologies. I think it's important to rely on the fundamental basic right things. So we drafted the new cyber law, which we believe will help to address the most important things which was not available to do for decades. We are drafting, which is in the final stage, we'll soon send to the parliament, the data law, which is about the availability and open data. And we will describe how the data sets need to be built. So we look as a foundational, because if we talk about the AI, the three important things is important: the talent, the data, and the high-performing computational power, so HPCs. So we are investing on. We are trying to structure and make it the rule of the game is clear for that data. We are investing on talented people, so we're skilling in the ministry. We fund the reskilling programs. And we are building, together with the private, and at this point more on the scientific needs, the infrastructure which will be good for the scientific researches. but we have an ambition to go and grow more. We just adopted the cloud-first policy as well, but to make it clear how you can get access to the based on the cloud technologies to the high-performing computational power. And these are the critical things to train and upgrade and prepare the numerous people in your country. I'm glad that I'm in this panel with the people who are. Everyone has an interesting role on this, and the reskilling is something that I will right now stress and get attention. And I think in a combination with all of this and working together hand to hand with the private and the state, we will be able to prepare for the changes with all these disruptive technologies what we are facing right now. And as a representative of the government, we need to remember that we have a duty in a society. We have a duty to protect the people who are not that much ready yet. We need to prepare them to get prepared for their. We use the cyber hygiene word, of course, but I think there is a lot of things even behind of this. And these are, I think, the important direction to prepare and also to protect the ones who are not prepared here yet. If we look to for the fake news or disinformation of manipulation using the AI tools, and when we talk about the cyber, you need to be a little bit ahead of the things which is happening right now. And we try right now to create the capacity and capabilities in our information security information system of Armenia. It's the cyber forces and the cyber capabilities to be able to overcome all of this. I think I used my 5 minutes, and I think I will stop at this moment here. Happy to listen and contribute if I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Dr. Gevorg. Let's move on, but at the end of this panel discussion, we will have, I believe, another 10-15 minutes where we can discuss. So, Your Excellency, Dr. Armen, given the rise of AI-driven cyber threats, particularly targeting the financial sector, how is the central bank adopting its regulatory and operational frameworks to mitigate these evolving risks?
Good afternoon. Shant, I was hoping you were not going to use the word Your Excellency and Doctor, because when you say this introduction, it's very hard to concentrate afterwards. Thanks very much. I think this is a really important question. Now, the fundamental currency of the financial system is trust. If trust is eroded, and that can erode very quickly, your financial system is out of the window. And this is the key problem that you have in the critical infrastructure like financial system. Now, if you look at the attack vectors or the threat landscapes in the financial system, the key and the most AI-centric one is really the deepfakes, frauds that can actually be very, very harmful for the financial system, right? These are the most obvious ones. And here, when you talk about this threat landscape, the identity is the key concept that central bank is now trying to make sure that in the financial system, the identity system, EIDs, are on a high quality. And that is why, jointly with the government, in our agenda, having a secure European standard EIDAS identity is the key for the central bank, right? So this is key. And I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the trust. And I'll give you an example. After the COVID, or during the COVID actually, the first days, right, when you are at the central banks, and financial system are obviously very, very important in this kind of environments. So you are looking for things which can go wrong and very quickly. And the importance of trust is something we observed during this period. So what do you think, I want to ask the audience because I want to see if they're actually paying attention or no. What do you think actually happened to the usage of cash during COVID in Armenia? Who thinks that the usage of cash during COVID went down? Can you raise your hands? And who thinks that the usage of cash went up?
The rest, I guess.
Not the rest, less. So ex ante, you would think that during COVID, the usage of cash would go down because it's just, nobody wants to touch the cash. What happened in reality, the usage of cash dramatically went up. The reason for this was because people were not trusting anything at that moment. They thought anything can go wrong, so they wanted to go and pile up the cash. So this is a situation which shows that things and trust are very, very important in this particular case. So the fundamental problem with the identity, if you don't have a high-quality infrastructure, is going to be where it's not that the people are going to trust everything. The worst situation is that actually nobody is going to trust nothing, because in that situation, democratic institutions and financial institutions are not going to work. The second thing I want to talk about is really what's the main risk landscape and what are the main threat landscapes for the financial system. And quite frankly, I don't see that this threat landscape is very much AI-driven. I think the main operational frameworks that the financial system have are actually applicable to the AI-driven cyber attacks and cyber threats in general. And the most important risks that are actually present in other technologies like clouds and alike are really the third-party providers. For the financial system, by far, the biggest operational risk is the third-party providers, very concentrated, very few companies in the world. You have the case in Armenia as well. Even in the biggest countries you go, the third-party providers are really key systemic financial risk. So I think this is a general problem as an operational risk for the financial system, and I think for the AI-driven threat landscape, it is exactly the same. There is only one thing which is very different, in my opinion, if you put AI in this picture, and the difference is that if AI technology involves and it has agency, which means it can actually make decisions on your behalf, then you really have a problem in terms of the financial inclusion in general, because that's very different from all the other technologies which do not make decisions on your behalf. And I think this is something which could also fundamentally erode the trust in the financial system and bring up lots of ethical questions. So that's in a nutshell, Shant.
Thank you very much for this detailed answer. Dr. Lewis, how do you see the integration of AI in protecting digital critical infrastructure, and how can we safeguard systems against AI-driven attacks?
Interesting question, and good afternoon. Let's go and start by defining artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence interrelates with cybersecurity. In the most simple definition, artificial intelligence is the simulation of human behaviors, reasoning, decision-making, and actions. If we concur with this definition, the human factor is relevant when it comes to the intersection between artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. The reason why is because, unfortunately, we have bad people. There are not much, but they are sufficient with the capacity to disrupt our systems in general terms. So there are multiple components or layers in protecting systems in general through cybersecurity to prevent artificial intelligence for creating damage. Everything in technology has pros and cons, and artificial intelligence is not an exception. Okay, so this is a combination of technical controls with human factors. If we talk about technical controls, we have been talking about advanced persistent threat for years. As a consequence, we have to consider advanced technologies using artificial intelligence to minimize the risk of existing systems. The other consideration is, from the technical standpoint, we have to increment the use of encryption, both symmetric and asymmetric. And today, artificial intelligence works in our favor to maximize the performance from the mathematical standpoint of those algorithms. We can also include multi-factor authentication as part of the battle to minimize the effect of the negative attack or the negative possibilities of artificial intelligence in our ecosystems. we have to implement and modernize the plans we have in place to deal with this kind of disruption created by artificial intelligence. Those are some of the factors, technical factors, that we can include or consider when trying to minimize the negative effect of artificial intelligence. From the human standpoint, it is my perception that traditional methods of education are not sufficient to deal with the current problems we have. We keep talking about algorithms that are encrypting 256, when in reality, we are encrypting 2054 and more. So those are new paradigms that we have to deal with. The other consideration is the regulation part. Regulating is not only and exclusively the only way to deal with artificial intelligence when it comes to cybersecurity, but it's important. It's important because somebody has to not to include the censorship, but to measure what is happening in the internet or through the cable, as I said today. In October 2023, the President of US enacted the first Cybersecurity Intelligence Act or Memorandum. This is an executive order to deal with cybersecurity issues related specifically to artificial intelligence. Members of the European community are working tirelessly to minimize the effect of artificial intelligence as well. Regulating is not always the best way to go because you are also restricting innovation. So we have to be very careful in the way that we combine artificial intelligence in our daily operation. Before I close up, I want to acknowledge the positive impression that I'm getting from the Armenian government, especially the Minister of High Technology, Central Bank of Armenia, Information System Agency of Armenia, that is fully committed to enhance the information system and cybersecurity ecosystem for the country. And yesterday, I was sincerely impressed for what I saw at TUMO. There is a unique program, and what I like more is the possibilities that you are offering to the young generations in Armenia to be involved with artificial intelligence. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Luis. Just a question. Do you have any recommendations for Armand on the third-party, managing third-party risk for cyber attacks?
This requires a deep analysis, but I want to repeat that we cannot keep postponing the integration of artificial intelligence in the operation countrywide because the implications are there. 4 years back, I ended the last sentence on the last paragraph of my second book with the following: the peace of the world is one click ahead. 4 years after, I want to add something to this statement, and this is related to artificial intelligence. So integration is a vital component of the new ecosystems.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Mr. Pegor, with TUMO's focus in fostering the future talent, how can education and training programs better prepare the next generation of cybersecurity experts to understand and manage AI-driven threats?
So yes, at TUMO we've embarked on a program of education for especially young people around cybersecurity with the support of ISAA, GIZ, and others. And we realized that we're dealing with 3 different levels simultaneously. The first one is targeted to those individuals who will become security experts, so professionals in the field of security, hackers, and we don't need many of those, but they need to be of very high quality. So our job is to kind of feed the narrow pipeline of such specialists at that first level. The second level is the IT professional in general, in businesses, institutions, banks, hospitals that are not security specific, but have a big role to play in hardening the business processes so that they are resistant to cyber attacks and malicious intrusions. And the third level, becoming increasingly more important, is just the public in general. Citizens becoming much more aware and sophisticated and skeptical with respect to the information they're consuming, because that's becoming a major source of malicious attacks aimed at forming public opinion, of creating specific panic situations, for example, et cetera. Not to mention the devices they use, whether it's mobile phones or pagers, as we saw recently. And in all of those levels, AI is extremely relevant, especially at that third level. So for example, misinformation is now delivered more and more effectively through deepfakes. Fundamental AI technology and increasingly difficult to detect as fake. And so public awareness around AI and constant kind of training, if you will, on how to detect this is very important. At the level of the second level I mentioned, which is the business IT specialist, AI is again one of the biggest technologies, both in terms of the attacks that will be submitted to, but also defense. For example, we now do a lot of training around making sure that our employees recognize phishing attacks when they see them. That will probably be replaced by AI detection as the attacks are happening, even predicting attacks, or immediate mitigation if they do take place, rather than relying on this constant and fairly ineffective training processes, as an example, right? And of course, at the professional security expert level, things like simulated white hat attacks, using AI to play the kind of red teaming role of attacking your systems constantly, is becoming critical, because it's no longer a case of trying to keep up or predict the attacks you're going to be suggested to by humans, but you're actually dealing with the AI-initiated attacks, so you need to be at least as fast. So at all these levels, whereas in the past several decades, IT, as in networking systems, operating systems, devices, were the predominant technology behind the field of cybersecurity. That's shifting now. Now it's becoming AI is the predominant technology. So by educating people about AI, we're already doing maybe 50% of the job of cybersecurity education, and the other 50% is more specific to security. And these levels are very interdependent, so that vulnerabilities at, for example, a business level, where there's a lot of backdoors to enter through, make the job of that first level cybersecurity expert much, much harder, and not to mention at the public level vulnerabilities. So it trickles up, and so it's important to address the three levels at the same time. And one last thing I'd like to say is a very interesting and scary prospect, which is that a lot of cyber attacks are run through what's called, used to be called human engineering or social engineering, where you're kind of fooling people into revealing vulnerabilities, giving credentials, et cetera. As those people are replaced by AI, operators are increasingly AI operators. Now it's a question of fooling the AI to allow you to authenticate you falsely, for example. And we've seen how vulnerable AI is to those attacks. For example, large language models. It's fairly easy to get around the guardrails they've established. Maybe fairly easy is an overstatement. But it is possible, despite the fact that people who build these LLMs, like OpenAI, have instructed them not to reveal certain information, not to give out, for example, biotech information that's sensitive, et cetera. Certain kinds of prompting will get around that. So that it's kind of fascinating that this human engineering aspect might be replaced by artificial human engineering, where AI is attacking other AI systems through prompt engineering. So a very fast evolving field, but I do think AI has become the focal point of cybersecurity, and that's how our education system or program is geared around that.
Mr. Pegor, knowing that AI has some vulnerabilities today and is not perfect, how do you see AI basically leading your classrooms, teaching other students?
Well, it's very in fashion these days to say that AI will not replace teachers, that it will be help to teachers. Because the opposite will be a very kind of an antisocial statement. To say teachers are the most loved professionals. Everybody has a teacher they remember. What we're seeing at TUMO, where we don't actually have teachers, we have coaches, we have workshop leaders, is that AI will replace the gap we have in terms of teachers. So for example, a lot of what we do is advise our students around picking or negotiating with their personal learning path that the computer generates for them to decide how to proceed, what choices they make around what workshops to attend, etc., are more likely to increase the likelihood of better outcomes for them, learning outcomes. And so we're building an AI coach that will help advise in that process. And it's not a question of replacing the teacher, but a question of giving each student an individual partner, let's say, who will guide them through and negotiate with them or help them strategize around their learning paths. And that's one example of the way we're doing it.
Do you believe the enrollment rate would increase with students having more that closer touch through AI?
Well, at TUMO, we have a waiting list of several thousand students, so hopefully it won't grow. But I think that if AI is used to increase the agency that students have, to make their own choices, to autonomously pick up learning opportunities, then definitely motivation will increase, because one of the biggest killers of motivation in schools is that kids are subjected to a very extremely standardized learning program, which by nature will leave out X% of the kids, the majority usually, for whom that standard was not optimal. And so if through AI, those standards can be more flexible while maintaining high ambitions, then probably enrollment motivation will increase. That's my prediction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pegor. Yes?
Can I mix up the plans a bit?
Absolutely.
It just because of your question on the AI replacing the teachers, do you know what's the word pedagogy in Greek? What are the roots of the word?
Pedal.
It's basically a child and lead. And the word lead, right? Now in Armenian, I'm sorry for non-Armenian speaking, we translated it manka varjutsun, varjatsnel, instead of lead, which is a very different concept.
Training more.
So the question is, are you going to trust, if it's standardized in terms of the information, that's okay, but the question is, are you going to trust AI to lead the kids? And I think if you put the question that way, that's actually a very, difficult concept. It's not only about the information, it's a leadership. So teaching is about leadership. So I would be very interested to hear Pegor's response, but I don't want to...
Do you have anything to say, Pegor, to...
Maybe we can continue
Later
the conversation after. It's not very specific to cybersecurity.
No, but in that case, I need to react. Because this is where the state has a play to role. Because when you talk about the ethical component and when you talk about the new models which are being published and can impact the masses, this is where you say, I want to first check the model to understand if the outcome of this model will be harmful or not harmful. So kind of to assess it. Is it easy? Of course it's not easy. Definitely it's not easy. But at least you're trying to play the role to manage the risks, because what His Excellency Dr. Bekian is mentioning, Armen is mentioning, but it's about again the trust what he's highlighting. Are we trusting this model or not? Because if it will be harmed, it is very hard to gain. And everything in a digital, not in a digital, in everyday life, if you don't trust each other, you can't do anything. All the time you will be stressed and looking back to look what's going on. Same for the model. If you manage the risk the way it is accessible for you, as much you understand it, you letting it to be leaded. So this is the formula, I think. So how to come to this balance? This is the maybe not billion-dollar question, but this is the question which is requiring everyday engagement.
If I could, so this trust issue, of course, is related to our topic. I have 5 children. They've gone through the school system at different levels in Armenia. I haven't always trusted their human teachers. Trust was built based on behavior. And so it's just like autonomous driving vehicles. Do you trust them? Well, to some extent, but then you don't trust most drivers human drivers on the street either. So if we start from the premise that humans have mutual trust that's unbounded, then of course it's a problem, but we don't, and AI will be just part of the mix, I think.
Thank you very much for your answers, gentlemen. Let's move forward with Karsten. In the context of AI's impact on global cybersecurity, how can international cooperation help address the ethical and societal challenges posed by AI-driven cyber threats, such as privacy, inequality, and the misuse of AI technologies?
Well, I wish you had not asked me how can it, but can it, because then I could have begun my reply with the words, in principle it can. But how is a whole different story. Now I believe that artificial intelligence can certainly help build a people-centered, inclusive, development-oriented society where everyone can create, access, and utilize and share information and knowledge premised on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and fully respecting and implementing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And if that sounds like very familiar language, it's not surprising, because that's language from 2002 from the World Summit on Information Society.
But Karsten, can the international community actually have the mature toolbox to help today?
We do, and that's what I'm trying to get to. The point I'm trying to make is that artificial intelligence is certainly a new technology. Well, no, it's not a new technology. It's certainly an enabler of an important technology, of information communication technology, but it's not revolutionary. It doesn't do something which we hadn't been doing before. Information communication technology made us communicate directly. It put huge amounts of data at our disposal. Yeah. We created new words, like to Google something. And artificial intelligence helps us to do this better, more effectively, faster. But it's not like it's doing something we hadn't been doing before. Now, the good news about this is that we've been, on the international level, we've been exploring how to use information communication technology, how to use it safely, and how to use it to the benefit of humankind for 25, 30 years. So by now we have a pretty good toolkit at our disposal. And we've been talking here a little bit about threats and about the need to build confidence. And if you allow me, I'll expand a little bit on that. So we've been working on the questions, what does information communication technology, and by extension, what does artificial intelligence mean to international peace and security for 25 years? And we've developed a number of responses. We've agreed that international law applies, in particular the United Nations Charter applies. We have developed norms for responsible state use of this technology. We've made progress on helping countries develop the capacities to apply these norms and rules. And we've been working very hard, and this picks up another point that we've discussed here. We've been working very hard on building the confidence that states will actually apply these rules, apply these norms, that states will behave responsibly in their use of information and communication technology. And that's very important, because if you have an incident that involves information communication technology and the risk increases exponentially with the use of artificial intelligence, that you have such an incident, that it becomes very serious. It puts the government under pressure. The government will have to respond. And I have enough experience in this to know that the first response that any good government comes up with is to say, it's not us, it's our fault. It's the bad neighbor. Yeah? And that's risky because we do not really have mechanisms to address these kinds of ICT and AI-driven crises. Now, it's possible to create such mechanisms. It doesn't take all that much. Yeah. The first thing it takes is you have to ensure that AI doesn't become autonomous, that you keep human control. You have to have a consensus that humans remain in control. You need to have a channel of communication with those who you consider relevant. And you have to agree on the mechanisms, how to use these channels of communications. But that's not much. It's really, it's very, very basic. And I could only encourage you to go down that road and explore how to do this kind of confidence building and how to find mechanisms to manage these kinds of crises. They will come, and they are becoming more likely as the world is turning more and more towards artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Mr. Carton. Question regarding the international community's involvement. How do they perceive AI as being weaponized by cyber criminals based on these emerging threats? Like, what are they doing today in that regards?
It's very interesting that while artificial intelligence has been added to the threats, to the list of threats that information and communication technology presents, including also abuse by cyber criminals, there's not a discussion that would focus on AI use for criminal purposes per se. There is a wider discussion on international cooperation to combat cybercrime. And there's, earlier this year, finally the draft UN Convention on cybercrime has been agreed between the negotiators and will, in the course of the next 12 months or so, go to the UN General Assembly and then be open for ratification, probably. So that will also, that convention will also allow responses to AI-driven use of ICT for criminal purposes. Let me add, these are among the biggest risks there are also for information and also for international peace and security. Because cyber criminals, they may be acting on their own, but they may also be acting under the cover of another nation state, or they may be acting with the tolerance. They may be tolerated by another government, and they can be very, very disruptive. Ransomware attacks is a typical thing. There's a US-led counter-ransomware attack, and I can tell you from experience, a ransomware attack which blocks the IT systems of the victim can have enormously disruptive effects, including, in some cases, we've had attacks on health systems, ransomware attacks on health systems, probably criminally motivated, but they had as a consequence people losing their lives, people dying. And that is something which actually no government can tolerate. So government has to respond, and you want to be able to respond in a responsible way that preserves international peace and security.
Thank you very much. Question to our panelists. Do you have anything to add to Carson's response in terms of government responding to such threats from AI as
Maybe I will just say a few words here that let's make it a lot of things make it clear that the AI is making its automation. It's making a lot of things fast. And when we talk about the government and the speed, sometimes they are not in the same direction. Because the nature of the government and a lot of things require the patience, balancing, absorbing. So when we are from one side have the something which is in a hyperspeed, and in some situation where the decision need to be very well balanced, structured due to institutions, this is all about how we generally need to change our way of the governance, how we need to make the decisions to be a little bit closer to the needed speed, but also to be able to manage and identify and manage the risks which is arising, which means a lot of things in our operation need to be automated and it need to become shaped in a different way. The question is, are we understanding this? The answer is yes. Are we able to do it? The answer is yes. Are we doing it right now the way we would like it to be? The answer is no. And definitely we need to team up and use all the resources what we have to come to this target, to make the third node to come to the yes. And this is the job, it's the daily job what we need to do. It's all about not just the cybersecurity. And I use the word just with the purpose, because this is all about the general public administration and general the decision-making process. And in our draft law, we presented that the officer who need to react in a speedy way, in a current operation model, they need to be protected based on their decision. If they made a decision, there should not be any economical case after this of the decision which can create some issues for them. They need to be secured on this new model. And this is all about right now of adapting to the new reality where we are living. Some people are maybe not rational or emotionally are not prepared or ready for this, but this is the role of the leadership as well. We need to, based on the threats and based on the challenges and the risks which we identify, to present, to sometimes even usually explain, to engage on the decision-making process and go together hand to hand on this. That's why we have the private companies who are right now working on this. That's why we have the community of cyber topics in Armenia, and we need to be as much as possible engaged to them and to listen, because a few things which could be not that much noticeable from our point of view, but they will notice it. And this is a way how you can balance all the risks and come to the target where we need to come. I just tried to sum up the way how we work on this. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Dr. Gevorg, do you see the private sector to actually contribute the most here in terms of continuous investment in this area?
It's obvious it is yes. Right now, even to be honest, I would like to see the people who will say no, without the private we can't do it. Everything, as long as we have in our country the infrastructure which is managed by the private, and there are the infrastructure which is not only just managed but also owned, if they are not the part of the game, I will use this word, if they are not the part of the whole processes, these are is creating the obvious risks. And without the engagement, which I just mentioned, this can't happen. And a lot of my colleagues in different parts of the world, they just realizing this as well, who is drafting the cybersecurity strategy, who is looking from the different angle. It's not easy to accept, but in some countries it's easy to accept, by the way. We need to also mention it. But when we say the private and the public, we are the part of the whole same society in the same country. We want to build the environment where everybody will be secured to achieve the targets or the dreams what they have. Our role is to secure that it is possible to do. And if they have a role to play, they need to be aware of what's their role to play. And our role and our mission and the purpose here is to just identify the roles, make it clear the rule of the games for anyone in their actions and the operations to be able to make it happen. Simple as it is, but not easy to do.
Let's hold on to this thought, because I really want to hear from Your Excellency, Dr. Armen. Is the central bank interested more adopting AI for the financial stability part, or more from the protection part for the banking sector, in terms of the risk we just described?
I'll be quick. For us, AI is not the focus, as I mentioned. I don't think the operating strategies are specific to AI and circuit breakers for financial system. I think the fundamental thing is to make sure that the private sector understand that it's its role and not the government's role to protect them. So the responsibility is really important. We are not in an operating model that government sort of protects everybody. It's really important. Government's role is to create a trust infrastructure so information can be shared. I think AI can be really leveraged when you have so much data in terms of analyzing the speedy data, understanding the threat landscape. That I think where AI is going to be a key in terms of getting the quick decisions and data analysis. But other than that, for us, AI is not the focus in this field.
Excellent, excellent. So we're almost running out of time. So thank you, gentlemen, for your insightful contributions today, and for some of you for traveling from all parts of the world. Please join me in thanking our exceptional panelists for sharing their valuable perspectives. We hope that today's session has been both enriching and thought-provoking.
Thank you.